My name is Mary Clay. If that's too complicated for you, just call me MC. And welcome to another episode of Drunk Middle Earth History, the show that initially began as me earnestly reading and experiencing Tolkien for the first time and has now devolved into this. Joining me today is Luke of the Podwans. Welcome, Luke.
Hi. I am now back to talk about more Tolkien stuff.
Woo! Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah. I'm still like so I've since ended my Star Wars podcast. I don't know if you know that or
I
not.
think I think I think you should redo it and you should do Skeleton Crew because Skeleton Crew is actually really good so far. You
I
should
re
watch Skeleton Crew.
I respectfully, and this is why I ended the Star Wars podcast. I don't care enough about Star Wars.
Damn. It's like the Goonies. It's like the Goonies in Star Wars
I'm
though.
sure the show is great. I'm sure it's fun, and maybe someday in my life I'll watch it on my own time. I don't
You
think
hate
I
it.
will ever.
The podcast literally ruined your fandom.
So okay, here's what it came down, not to talk about Star Wars on my Lord of the Rings podcast, but I
That's that's what happens when you have me on.
the reverse would probably also happen. If we were doing Skywalk Before You Run, we would
Oh yeah,
somehow be talking about
yeah,
Tolkien, I bet.
probably.
The problem was that I think Star Wars is fine. It is a fun watch one time. And I think I think, I think the time that you spend breaking it
Uh,
down and discussing it makes it worse, which means that having a podcast talking
oh
about it
yeah,
made it worse
yeah,
for me.
yeah. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's very fair.
But you know what I actually found out I enjoyed a lot, though, is Lord of the Rings and Tolkien.
Yeah. Like I said last time, Tolkien is my second love. Besides the good old ye old Star Wars, it goes Star Wars, then Lord of the Rings closely behind it. 1A, 1B usually. So yeah, I'm really excited for it to be back in theaters though.
I know, right? So as we're recording this, I'm seeing a bunch of like my like Tolkien creator friends,
Mutuals. hmm
everyone posting that they're at this premiere that
In London.
I was not invited to. I wouldn't have ever expected to be invited because I've
Yeah.
never once like asked or like put myself out there to be included in these kinds of things. And also like I make pretty inconsistent content now, so I'm not surprised. Also, my passport wouldn't have I wouldn't have been able to travel internationally anyway.
Oh no, not the passport.
It's fine. I have until I'm in the process of renewing it now, but
Oh, that's good.
what was the? Oh, okay. Everyone is in London right now for the premiere of War the Rohirrim. And when this episode comes out, it'll be coming out. The movie will be out like in a couple days, like this week. So theoretically, this will be an episode you can listen to if you want to know what is this movie going to be about? What's the backstory?
Ooh.
This is a great place to have some fun with that. If you want detailed explanations that get everything right, then go to other places. But if you want the gist, we'll get into it. We'll have fun talking about it. We're
Yeah.
talking about the history of Rohan today, which is it's detailed in the appendices of Return of the King, which I did not read. It took me several years after I read the books to come back to the appendices. Have you ever read them before, or was this like your first time taking a stab at it?
Just like my 5 attempts of reading the Silmarillion and not understanding everything that's ever said to me. I've done the appendices quite often. There's new things that I discover every time. But I mean, before I got into the books, there wasn't really a resource that I could use because your boy is not a good reader. I mean, I can read. I'm not saying that I can't read, but I can read, but it's like only stuff that I am like interested in.
No, I get it.
But like now the best thing is being like around all of you guys, like you, the Tolkien content creator stuff. I learn new stuff every day, you know. And yeah, so I've long short answer, MC, is yes. I have read the appendices.
Cool. Um, yeah, my takeaway whenever people I was actually just having a conversation with a friend about Rings of Power because he's watching season 2 right now and he was asking me
Oh,
like, well, should I read the Silmarillion? Like what? And I was having to explain like, well, they don't have rights to the Silmarillion, so it's not about that. It's really they have the appendices and he was like, so what should I read? She's like, oh, so I should read the appendices. And I was like, you don't really have to. There's like 4 separate
yeah,
appendices that are just about like language. You don't need to read those. And like the only
yeah.
anyway. Appendix A and B are, I would say, like the main like
The
bulk
meat and
of like,
potatoes.
yeah, it has like so much additional information that you're like, you Tolkien put this as a footnote. That's insane.
Yeah, yeah, so like obviously the appendices were with the Lord of the Rings, so he had all of those ideas for the Silmarillion in his noggin, and he just decided to put it at the end of the last book. It was like, here, have at it.
He is insane. Like I
Oh yeah.
regularly say, I'm like, I would be afraid to interact with Tolkien in real life because of like he just has such a level of almost mania regarding this
Yeah,
world.
yeah.
And like it was
I
put
would
to good
say,
use, but there's so much that you're like, damn, this wasn't even like the main plot. You just like,
yeah. No, I mean, between him and George Lucas, those are the two I would say 1A, 1B of like world building that can make a universe or make a story and expand it into millennium or generational stuff. So that's him and Lucas are the only ones that I would consider as like groundbreaking for like that type
mm.
of storytelling.
And like, and yeah, just like speaking of like expanding it into like multiple generations. So here we are where Lord of the Rings is back in movie theaters again. And that's like
Yeah.
so it's so exciting and I think it's also really cool that it's animated
Mm,
this
It's
time around too.
It's, in my opinion, animated is so much easier to get away with doing these one-offs because it's not as expensive to do live
Hmm.
action. Like to like think about this. If they did like a War of the Rohirrim live action movie, would it be getting as
Just I for the listener.
Oh, there we go. Sorry.
Luke's Luke's camera just like dropped, and
Yeah.
all of a
Um.
sudden he just disappeared into this Rohan background he has on Zoom. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
It's
Continue.
it's Edoras. It's Edoras. Anyway. So. What was I saying? What was I
Before I
saying?
rudely, oh yeah, that they can get away with more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's not as expensive, and I feel like you can do more storytelling in animation than you can, and you can
Hmm.
take more risks, like having a horse do like insane jumps and stuff like that. You don't have to worry about like an actual horse getting hurt, stuff like that. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, and you know,
and
I
yeah,
think there would also be like a natural comparison. If it was a live action movie, there would just be a natural comparison to the original movies versus the Hobbit movies and like how do you make like a live action Tolkien movie in 2024 stand stand the test of time like it did in 2000 and
you're
I think having it be a totally different like creative direction just like takes that comparison out immediately.
Yeah, and with the animation, and I think that really helps too. And I mean, we'll get that answer, MC, in a couple of years with Andy Serkis's Hunt for Gollum.
Now that's a movie I don't care about.
You and me both.
I think the majority of the fandom is like of
I would have
all the
rather
things.
I would have rather seen a young Aragorn story.
Yeah.
I think that's more fit for TV, to be honest, because he does do a whole lot of adventures of him growing up and then him leaving Rivendell in his early 20s, traveling the world for 30 years, fighting with Thangol, and Ecthelion, and doing all of that fun stuff, which is, by the way, in the appendices where you learn all of this. It's not in the actual story itself.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
I would have rather
totally
seen
agreed
that.
there. Yeah, I've always said that I would love a video game where you play like as Aragorn, but like
Ooh,
in his
yeah.
Ranger days and you just like run it, it's open world. You like run
Yeah.
around Middle Earth doing like quests and like hunting orcs or whatever. And then like
Yeah.
you know, hang out in taverns and you check in with the local people and then you run into a bard and oh, it's actually The Witcher. I'm sorry. That was The Witcher. But no, literally, I think that I've always thought the exact same thing. But okay, yeah, speaking of the appendices, how the appendices go into Aragorn's backstory. That's great. We're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about this section. It's literally like 2 pages. It's like two or three
Yeah.
pages in the appendices. And yeah, and that's like what the movie is about. And that's what I was telling my friend about is how the appendices will have like one paragraph and it's like, yeah, and 100 years of war passes in that like one paragraph in the appendix where it's just like bare bones factual information about like this time period.
Yeah.
And we'll see the movie flesh this out. First and foremost though, we have to pronounce the name of the people that we are talking about.
Aoral.
Eh,
It's Aoral.
I know, but every time I say it, it sounds like I mean, it doesn't help that I am drunk now, but ale.
It's Aoral. Aoral.
I know, but it's the R and the L next to each other is
Aoral.
atrocious.
Aoral.
Aoral, the
Aoral.
young.
Aoral the
Um,
Young.
is that what's the name of this section? Yeah, the House of
House of
Aoral.
Aoral. Yep. House of Aoral.
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 And these people, he is the Lord of, and I posted on Threads and was like, how do you pronounce this? Because there's no way it's not just Eotheod.
It's the Aothade. Yeah, Aothade. Yeah, Aothade.
Eotheod.
Yeah, Aothade. It's actually an old English English name, and it comes out as saying horse folk, I think it is in Old English.
That would check out. That would check out for these people.
Yep.
And essentially, if you've ever wondered, like, well, where did the people of Rohan come from? Where did Rohan come from? They are Eorl, the first lord, the first king, is like descended from one of the kings of Rohan, and then those people, there have been over the hundreds of years that like Gondor has been around other people existing in like the northern, western, not western, wait, never.
North
Yeah, northwestern
Northwestern.
areas, like
Yep.
outside of Gondor. And this one time this battle happens and Gondor, would you believe it? Gondor calls for aid. And would you believe it? Rohan answers.
Answers.
Except for they're not
Yeah.
Rohan yet at that point.
No, no, yeah. I think this is the most interesting part is that they are actually like the difference between them and the Numenorians is pretty similar. I mean, wow, that sentence doesn't make any sense. The difference, but the similar. Anyway, um, uh, they are descended from the Edain,
Hmm.
which were the men of the first age. Um, so that's interesting. So it's like brother helping brother, you know? It's
Yeah,
awesome.
this and like this is the part in let's see, we're in the third age now, and Rohan and
Yeah.
Gondor they're all bros. They're
Yeah,
supporting
they are
each
bros.
other. Very different relationships than we see play out in, you know, in Lord of the Rings. And yeah, I think it's cool that like we're so like Rohan's most iconic moments is like when Rohan shows up at the Battle of Pelennor Fields is like one of the most iconic moments of, you know, Tolkien and the books and the films. It's amazing. And I think it's really cool that like it goes back to how they were founded, that like Gondor was in the middle of this battle, they're in the middle of this fight, and these people who lived off elsewhere came to help them, and then as a reward, they got this land that became known as Rohan.
Yeah.
And like that's their roots, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it is pretty awesome how that all turned out. Um, but I mean, it just goes back to show you like Tolkien's like men need to stay together. And they also were fighting against what were known as the Herodrum. That's who they were fighting, the Easterlings, or the Easterlings as they're called. So they used to fight with chariots. So think of like Roman times. They were on chariots and going through, and that's why Gondor was having such trouble. And then you have the Rohirrim, or the Eothade at the time, coming on horses, and they make a whole lot of difference. And they were actually, a lot of their people were enslaved for a while. So, yeah, I don't know if I explained that right,
No, you
but
did a great job.
I that's that. Shout out to Matt from Nerd of the Rings for helping me out with that one. Because I literally watched like the whole history of Rohan. I was like, yep, this is all I need. I don't need the appendices. Come on.
Throw that out. So, also, I think it's so, I just find the way that like certain perspectives are centered in the telling of Lord of the Rings. So, for example, these people, their name for themselves is Eorlingas, but Gondor's name for this land is Rohan and the Rohirrim. And that's how we know them. We know them by the name that Gondor calls them, not the like cultural original name that the people have for themselves. And and like a
Yeah.
lot of that happens with in like the Silmarillion, with the way that like the elves are our central perspective of things. So like we get like
Yeah.
the elven names for stuff.
Yeah, and the different names, different types of elvish names. Like what was Galadriel's name? Is it Sindarin or is it Quenya? I can never remember. But they have different like telling. They have different languages for the Sylvan elves and the Noldor, the Eldar. So that's kind of the same thing. And I mean, if you think about it, Gondor and Rohan, obviously Rohan has their own way of like living. They're more of like your farmers, your livestock, type of folks, whereas Gondor is more of like your city life.
Mhm.
They're more concerned about that than growing grains and feeding horses and stuff like that. So
Right.
you're also dealing with a different culture as well. So that's why they were able to, why Gondor called them Rohan, as well. But yeah.
Yeah. A couple like random people in Rohan are called out in this history. One is Fram, who goes and like kills a dragon, and the dwarves are like,
Yeah.
"Yo, that's our like the dragon horde is
Yeah.
ours." And
Yeah.
Fram said, "Fuck you." And he sends them a
Yeah.
necklace made of the dragon's teeth, which is so petty. I
Yeah,
love it. And
it's
he's like, this is the only jewel you will see of this, of this dragon, of this treasure. And then, like, that section, like, that paragraph ends with, there was no great love between Eothid and the dwarves.
yeah, and it's like, Mans was like, I just put my life on the line and y'all didn't even do shit. So you're not seeing any of this money ever.
Man. And I thought I also was like reading into like the fact that he chose to, so he made a neck. I don't know if he made a necklace, if he made it, if he like sat down and did like arts and crafts with the dragon teeth or, whatever. But like the beef that dwarves have with elves goes back to a necklace, a different
Yes.
necklace. And so it's
Yes.
just like, it's so like Fram didn't have to do this, but he
No.
did.
He chose to. He said, you know what? I think I'm immune to F around and find out. I think I'm just gonna F around and not have any consequences on that for
Oh
whatsoever.
God. I love it. I love it. Another important note in Rohan's history is Errol's father, Leod, um, He was killed by a horse, and then Eorl
Oh
sought.
yeah.
I threaded
Yeah.
about this earlier
No, I
today.
saw that. No, I saw it. I saw it. Yeah. That's
Because
amazing.
it's such a wild story that you're like, surely this is made up. That like it sounds like it sounds like a plot line out of like Parks and Rec or something. That like
Yeah, little Sebastian accidentally killed Andy Dwyer.
and then like April seeks out revenge against.
Yeah,
It literally says like he sought to avenge his father. So Eol goes out and like fully intending to. He is seeking vengeance on a horse. A horse. And he shows up to the field, and then the horse is magical and beautiful, and and then he's like, "Never mind, I'm not going to kill you. I will name
I
you." Oh, I wrote it down. It's like Fefalarf or something.
oh man.
Felaroth. That's
Felaroff.
it.
Yeah, Felaroff.
Felaroth. He names it
Felaroff.
Felaroth, and then that horse. Would you believe? Of course, even Shadowfax has a genealogy, like
Yeah,
family tree.
I was just about to say, yeah, he is part of that lineage, man. That's pretty awesome.
Yep. So
Of the
the
Meras, the yeah, Felaroff. Felaroff is how you pronounce that. Felaroff.
so those are kind of like all the notable pieces of history before we get to what War of the Rohirrim is about, which is this conflict between Helm Hammerhand and some like people who are on the outskirts of
The
Rohan's
Dunlendings.
society. Yeah. And the conflict that like happens because of that. So our key characters here are Helm. He is the king of Rohan. Freyka is the Dunlending who claims that he is descended from one of the kings of Rohan. So he thinks he's cooler than he is.
Yep.
His son, Wolf, Wulf,
Yeah, Wolf. Wolf.
which sounds like it sounds like the name of your political enemy's son that you don't want your daughter to marry. Like, hey, what do we name this like
Or
terrible
Baron.
guy? Wolf.
Or Baron.
And then we have Helm's daughter, who is not named in the appendices,
Yes. Yes, she's not.
that I believe in the movies is named as Hera. So
Yes, Hera.
immediately we're leveling up. She has a name. Victory for women
Victory. I was just
everywhere.
about to say victory for women.
Um,
One small step for man, one
one
large leap for
tiny
women.
step for woman. There is Howleth, who is one of Helm's sons, I think his older son, and Hama is his other son.
Yes.
I think those also might be names of some like random side characters in
Hama
Two
is
Towers.
definitely, yeah, definitely Hamaman. Hama is the boy that Aragorn grabs the sword
Yeah, and
from in
like
Two
waves it
Towers.
around.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely. I was like, I've heard that name before, and now it's making sense.
Yeah. And let's see, Hild is Helm's sister, and then
Yes.
Freyalaf, not to be confused with the horse Felaroth. Freyalaf is Helm's nephew. Wait, yeah. So those are kind of
Yes.
a lot of our key players. It's a lot of like sons, nephews, all that going on. And then Hera, Helm's daughter. So, okay.
Yes.
Helm is like, I don't trust Freyka as far as I can throw him, but gotta keep an eye on him. So he comes to the council and like chats and does stuff, meetings and stuff at Edoras.
Mhm.
I guess so that he can keep your friends close, enemies closer.
Yep.
And immediately he fat shames him. Not cool, Helm, but he fat shames him.
Does.
And then like at the end of this meeting, he's like, all right, let's take this outside. And Freyka wants Helm's daughter to marry
Very
his son,
wolf.
Wolf. And Helm is like, no, your son's name is Wolf. No, not gonna do that. And then he's like, he yells at the people who are like nearby. And he's like, go away. You don't need to be here for this. And then he punches him and he dies.
Yeah, yeah. Helm Hammerhand has a strong right hand.
Yeah, and thus Helm Hammerhand is
And yeah,
born.
it's born. Yeah, yeah. Helm, like, and it also is like they like Wolf and Freka were like egging him on too, and old man Helm Hammerhand said, "Ha ha 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 ha!
Fuck you.
Thanos Infinity Gauntlet to the face," and then he knocked
Let's
him
see.
out.
He says, "It is my turn to speak. Freka, your folly has grown with your belly." Some more fat shaming. Not a great look in 2024. "You talk of a staff. If Helm dislikes a crooked staff that is thrust on him, he breaks it. So," and then he punches him in the face.
Yeah, it's
It actually
great.
says he smote him such a blow that he fell back stunned. And so when I've been telling like normal people about War of the Rohirrim, I've been
Yeah,
like, so
normal
it
people.
starts with a guy punching another guy to death. He punches him
Yeah,
so hard, he KOs him and he dies, and it starts a war.
yeah. And that's basically it.
Yeah,
That's how it starts.
I think it's pretty cool. So his son, Wolf, spends a couple years brooding on this, comes back mad, and forces everyone out of Edoras and like takes
Yeah.
the throne, and they all go to what they call at that point the Hornburg, but we,
Yeah.
because of this moment in history, becomes known as Helm's Deep.
Helm's Deep. Yep.
Heck
Yep.
yeah. And they spend like 4 years in this period where Wolf is on the throne in Edoras. I believe this is how one of Helm's sons dies, is by like fighting
Yes.
Wolf to try and like, get him out of there and defend the throne, but he dies in that battle. And then everyone else is like off at Helm's Deep, and it's rough because they're in uh what do you call it when, I don't know, you're hiding. They're in
They're
hiding, whatever.
yeah, they're in hiding, yeah.
They're taking refuge, whatever. And it's also a really terrible winter, and
Yeah.
so they don't have a lot of food. It's really cold. It's rough. It's
Yep.
really rough. And oh, that's right, because Hama, his other son, dies at some point in some of these like battles and skirmishes and
Yeah.
whatnot. And so Helm starts going out and like fighting people on his own, and like it's winter, it's dead winter, blizzards everywhere. I'm imagining like no visibility. This is what I'm most excited to see in the movie.
Yeah.
That I guess I should say that like I'm hoping we get to see. So they describe that like he has this horn, and like in the middle of the night they can hear this horn going, and they're like, heck yeah, that's our king out there kicking ass, taking names. And and then one day though, he doesn't come back. And they're like, fuck. And I just imagine like the like fog and snow clearing. And in the distance, they see his frozen body still like in action, frozen there, dead. And they're like, it was like a ghost.
Yeah.
And oh wait, hang on, let me look up the exact line because it's like the most metal thing I've ever heard in my life.
Just
Um,
have Christopher Lee's like metal band playing at the same time, like
yes.
when doing that. Did you know that
Let's see.
they AI'd his voice for this movie?
Ugh, I don't know how I feel about that.
I don't know how I feel about that either.
I don't like, I get it. Like, yeah, Christopher Lee is like such a legend, and like, who else could play Saruman? But at the same time, like,
Well, okay, so this is what I'm thinking. If they got permission to do it, and they're and his will or his family is getting like a benefits from it, I'm okay with it.
I guess so. But like, in Christopher Lee died in like 2012, 2014 or something. What could we have comprehended if someone had come to you in your like old age and been like, "Hey, are you okay if we AI your voice at any point in the future?" And you're like, "Yeah, sure, do whatever."
I
Do,
mean,
are you able to like comprehend what AI can do at the point that you agree to
yeah,
it?
it's a little wild, I will say that. Yeah, he died June 7th of 2015.
Oh,
He's been
2015.
dead. He's been dead for almost 10 years. That's crazy.
That's rough. I
2015 was 10 years ago.
Every day
No,
that Ian
that's not.
McKellen
No.
ages makes me more nervous.
And the fact that they have to put out two movies and not just one now.
He's like, hey, I'll play Gandalf if I'm still alive, is what he's
Which,
said.
which I mean, is good for him because Gandalf is old anyway, so he doesn't run into the Elrond issue.
I guess. I don't know. Man, I'm just so mad about this two-part Gollum movie.
I don't think it's gonna be two parts. I think it's gonna be two separate movies. One's gonna be Hunt for Gollum, and then the other one's gonna be something else.
Something
But
more
they're gonna
interesting, I hope.
uh Aragorn.
Because there was a video game that came out in recent years that was like about Gollum escaping
Yeah,
whatever,
I
and
hate
it was
that
like
game.
a
I
notoriously
could never.
terrible video game.
Yeah, it's not. It wasn't good. It came out like last year, I think.
Yeah. And
Bad,
like I think a lot of that
bad
had to
game.
do with like the actual like gameplay, maybe not necessarily the story or the fact that it was like
Okay,
about Gollum, but like that doesn't
but,
help.
but like it's Gollum. Who the f is gonna who the hell is gonna play that game
There's
and
just
think it's
so
successful? I
there's
hate it. I
just
hate it here. I hate it here.
And that's what like I am really excited about War of the Rohirrim because it's choosing this like obscure piece of the lore to
Yeah.
expand upon and like tell this story. And like this is super interesting.
Do, do
They're
you
not
know what makes it so why I'm rooting so hard for this to do really well? 'Cause then it opens up to the possibility of us getting other Legendarium stuff in animated form. And I've talked to a bunch of other Tolkien creators about this. I truly believe the only correct way to do the Silmarillion or the stories in the Silmarillion would be in anime type form.
yeah.
I think it's perfect. I think the animation that we have in this movie would be perfect, perfect for like the telling of Baron and Luthien, the telling of Tuor Turambar, or the battles of the First Age. Like you, you don't do it justice live action. Don't get me wrong. The prologue episode for Rings of Power is great, but
But the problem that like we get into is that yes, obviously a lot of that has to be like CGI,
okayed.
digital effects, and like
Yeah,
the way that I've talked about this in like my Star Wars episodes about
yeah,
how I enjoyed the 70s movies so much more than the modern movies because the
yeah.
70s kind of had this limit placed upon them and they had to be creative because of that. And
Yes, they did.
now when you can do anything kind of makes it boring. And like that's how we ended up with the Hobbit movies. Is that like you can do
Yeah,
anything, so we don't have to worry about doing practical effects or making sets or, adding in details to costuming or, whatever.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
it doesn't look good. And I think doing a live action of like trying to add in all these digital and special effects. I mean, just thinking about like the music of the Ainur, where it's like such an
Mm,
abstract concept. How do
yes.
you can't make that live action?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you think about it, the Idol Indole, like you could have a montage in anime and it would be
I'm
gorgeous.
just imagining like old school like Disney Fantasia, Like
Not that old. Not that animation
no,
type
not that
though.
I mean not that style, but like that concept of like you have like a
Yeah.
musical score that you animate
Yeah,
to.
because you could because that's how the Idol Indole happens.
Yeah.
So I that's what I'm most excited for is that if this does really well, which I think it will, I think the Tolkien community is really, really excited about this. And they are taking a swing at something that's different.
It's so
So
different and I love that.
I agree. I think it's going to be so interesting that we could get other things that are beloved in this franchise and not have to wait another 20 years for more Tolkien content.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's my concern is going to be that the movie is going to be really heavy-handed with like, look at this story of this woman standing up for herself and she doesn't need a man and like going like too far in this like, ooh, it's a feminist icon direction.
I don't think they will.
I hope that because I know the kind of like reception that has.
Oh yeah,
So I
it's
hope
terrible.
it doesn't happen. Anyway, so this
Time will tell.
really insane part of the battle happens where the siege. That's kind of what I was looking for, but I guess no one's really sieging them. They're just like over there in Helm's Deep by themselves. Okay, anyway, so Helm goes out. His frozen corpse is revealed in the sunlight. And it says, there stood Helm dead as stone, but his knees were unbent. Yet men said that the horn was still heard at times in the deep, and the wraith of Helm would walk among the foes of Rohan and kill men with fear.
Yeah. If you don't have like Master of Puppets playing or what's the other really good one by them? Not Enter Sandman because that's too obvious. Yeah, Master of Puppets by Metallica would be perfect, actually, now that I think about that.
It's just so cool. It's so cool that they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, and his ghost still haunts the land, killing people with fear, like, out of fear. God.
No. For whom the bell tolls.
Ooh.
Yeah. Can you just imagine? Copyright.
Well, what's funny is that Zoom automatically muted that, so I didn't hear anything.
That's hilarious.
Everyone just imagine it at home.
Do, 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 do. Anyway, nah, I
So,
think that would be perfect.
the king has died, rip. But spring comes, the winter ends, and then it's literally like in one sentence.
Yeah.
So, okay, so at this point, I think it's just it doesn't we don't hear anything about Helm's daughter that like all
No.
of this started over. We don't hear any other updates about her. It's just that I guess she's just there. But
Yeah.
his Helm has died, his two sons has died, and his sister Hild has a son, Freyaloth. And
Freyaloth.
it's
Yep.
literally like, and then he showed up and took Wolf out, and that was it. It literally says he surprised Wolf and Meduseld and slew him and regained Edoras. So in one sentence,
Yeah.
this whole thing ends.
Yeah.
And
Pretty
the end.
crazy. The end. We're not gonna tell you anything. Um,
But like that'll be the cool part in the movie that like we get to see these like minute details like play out
yes.
in, in a
Yeah,
more like
absolutely.
cinematic landscape.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I'm
Um,
really excited for it.
yeah. So after all of that, it says that like it took years for Rohan to like get back to full strength. It was like several kings later.
Yep.
So like they were, really struggling. Gondor is still over doing their thing. They're having some of their Oh yeah, that was another thing during all this is that Gondor was fighting their own fight, and so they
They were
couldn't
fighting
send
Umbar. They were fighting the Corsairs of Umbar at the
yeah,
time.
on the shores,
Yep.
so like they couldn't send any kind of aid to help Rohan. But
Nope.
anyway, wouldn't you know it? Who comes knocking on the door as soon as this like civil war of Rohan is over and the new king is restored? Who comes showing up? But Saruman.
Saruman. Yeah, this is actually the where they give him the keys of Orthanc.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the time, before Saruman took up residence there, the Númenóreans slash Gondorians, that's where they were all, they had like a post there. And then after years and years of strife and not much manpower, it was left to its own devices. Like the Gondorians gave the rule to the Eothed when they came down, like we had discussed earlier. They had given them the keys of Orthanc. So then when Saruman shows up, they give him the keys of Orthanc. And this begins the beginning of the end for Saruman. This
Mm-hmm.
is really his like where his malice and dislike of the Rohirrim starts, truly.
And I think it's so like funny to me how it's phrased in this section of like, well, who can say what Saruman's intentions were? Maybe he was
Yeah.
friendly, maybe he was starting out with malice, but the theory is that like he started showing interest, wanted to look into Orthanc and like this area because he suspected this is
Yeah.
where a Palantir ended up from a different part of the history that we won't get into. But long story short, a Palantir got lost and or
Well,
destroyed, and he was
w-
like, "Let me try and find it."
well, sort of. There was already a Palantir in Orthanc, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it just says he went there in hopes that it would that it would still be there, I guess.
Yeah, the
So it's a
Palantir,
different
because then
Palantir.
when the Numenorians were first doing that, that's where they left one of the Palantir, because there was one in Osgiliath, there was one in Ithil Arnor, or Minas Arnor, and then there was one I think in Weathertop, and then there was one that was in close to Linden because it was like one that they connected at one point. Yeah. So yeah, Orthanc always had a Palantir.
Okay, gotcha. And he was like, "Let me go investigate. Let me go see if
Yeah,
it's
let me see if that's still there.
yeah." And then it goes into the it kind of like flows into what we later know to happen with like Theoden, Aemir,
Yeah.
all that stuff from Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
A couple other things that I just think are interesting to point out. Rohan is like so young. Like
Yeah.
it's like the United States of Middle Earth. How like
Yeah,
there's so
absolutely.
our country is only like hundreds of years old, whereas like you go
France,
other places in the
Italy.
world and it's like, yeah, this building was built 4,000 years ago. And you're like, what?
People existed?
That's
What?
insane. I mean, that is obviously there were indigenous and native people to this land
Yes.
before
Yeah. Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
became the United States of America. But that like it became a country in recent world history. And same
Yeah.
with Rohan. Rohan was founded and became a thing like 2,000 years into the third age. The third
Yeah,
age.
the third age, yeah. And it's interesting because it's like, yeah, the people were there forever, but like the established country of Rohan was more recent. I
Yeah.
mean, like it is interesting how the Numenorians were just like, here's Orthanc, take it. Like they could have, like I don't think the Numenorians really thought that through, to be honest. Or the Gondorians didn't really feel think that through, to be honest.
They're like it's like the I don't know abandoned house on the
Come on,
outskirts of
man.
town, and
Come
they're like
on,
we don't want to
man.
deal with the property
We
taxes. Let's just give it to
man,
someone else.
man, we're gonna have to do tariffs on Rohan, man. Like it's not what we want, man.
Yeah. Another thing that I just think is cool. I mean, I guess it goes back to like how short the history of Rohan is in the grand scheme of things. That like you can trace the lineage of their kings to two family lines. So
Yeah.
Helm was the last of the first line of kings, and then it went over to his nephew. And then,
Yes.
eventually we get to Theoden, and then it goes down to his nephew, Aemir. So Aemir started
Yep.
the like third line of Rohan kings. And then finally, just a reminder that in Two Towers, the movie, Aragorn's horse is named after one of the kings of Rohan, Brago.
Yes, Brego, 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 Brego.
If
Your
you
name
wanted
is
to know like
King.
how highly the Rohirrim like value their horses, that they name them after their kings.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty
I love
awesome,
it.
to be
I love
honest.
it.
I love that. I love it. But yeah.
Any do you have it? Yeah, do you have any final thoughts? Anything that sticks out to you about Rohan, or anything in particular that like
Um,
you're looking forward to for War of the Rohirrim?
I'm looking forward to I mean, who is that person that has those rings?
What? Is this an intro? What?
No, like at the end of the first trailer, it's the black hand with the rings.
Oh,
Is that the mouth
I
of
haven't watched any of the
Sauron?
trailers since they first came out. I don't
Oh,
know.
oh well. They're obviously doing something with Sauron because he is around. He is not. This is even
Can
before The
you imagine if
Hobbit
they
as
got
well.
Charlie Vickers to voice?
Oh my God, I don't think that those two fandoms would like that very much. Not my Sauron. What? Anyway, No, I'm just really excited just to sit in a theater and watch Lord of the Rings again,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
never experienced that. Because
Oh,
I
no, wait. Yeah, you didn't.
because I only came to, watch Lord of the Rings in the middle of the pandemic. The closest I've gotten is a local theater was doing a screening of Two Towers. And like that's like the one time I've like collectively experienced
Oh, you need to
Tolkien with other
the
people.
next time your local cinema does the extended editions, you gotta do those.
It was pretty. My friends a couple weeks ago had a Hobbit themed birthday party, and we watched Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
the
was that
plan.
person going, "Hey, did you know that in the book, Galadriel gives Sam dirt from her garden, and then he uses that dirt." It was very fun.
We're actually gonna do that for my 30th birthday. We're just gonna do a like we're gonna make like a Hobbit, not like Hobbit, but like Middle Earth meals and watch the movies and
It's
do
a
all that
fun
stuff.
time. Like you can't go
Yeah,
wrong. The vibes are
yeah,
immaculate. Yeah.
and we'll enjoy the smoking of pipe weed.
Absolutely. Additionally, another thing I think worth discussing about the War of the Rohirrim are the popcorn buckets that
Oh,
came
the
out.
popcorn buckets are
And one of them is
awesome. It's a
literal.
hammer. I need it. I need it. I need it like yesterday. I'm
It
not even
makes me
kidding.
I've been meaning to film like a TikTok doing like a sketch of like POV, you're sitting next to the person in the theater who has the Warhammer popcorn bucket and the handle is like stabbing you in the head as you're
Well, it'll
watching
be
the movie.
great because then once I get that, then like we won't have to like me and my fiance won't have to sit next to each other. I can just like
You could just
move the hammer. I can just move the hammer, like hold it out and then pull it back when I want it back. Oh, it's gonna be
it's
great.
so these when these popcorn buckets came out,
Yeah.
I was like, they're surely like I don't know. I was like, these are so insane that they're actually
They are
brilliant.
awesome. It's great. I can't wait to get one.
It's brilliant. Yeah.
I'm seeing it on Friday of next week.
Yeah,
So I'll have to
I still need
dodge a
to
couple of spoilers, but
yeah, I still need to make my plans for who I'm gonna see it with and where, but I will
yep.
at the very I'm one of those people who like I don't care if I go to the movies by myself, you know? So
Oh, I
like
would. I mean, I'm kind of like that too, especially with something that I love like
yeah, I'm
this.
like
I mean,
I'll go watch it. So regardless of if I get people in my life to go see it with me, I'm gonna be like, "Hey, I am doing this. You can come with me." Fair warning, I might scream.
for sure.
So, yeah, I would say like the moment and maybe I need to like lower my expectations because it's always the worst when you're like, oh, I really hope they do this and then they don't and then you're
Yeah.
disappointed, even if it's still a great movie. I just really am looking forward to that like reveal of like the snow clearing and then Helm's like frozen corpse
I
up
bet
in
you.
the
I bet you.
distance.
I bet you it'll be very, very accurate to what is said in the book.
God, it's well, and I think that's another point that's really cool is that they've chosen such a it's a very brief story. So they
Yes.
have room to fully flesh it out. It's not like
I
they bit
mean,
off more than they can chew. This is a
I mean
very
this,
digestible story.
and I mean you're also talking to the person that made Helm's Deep into a 40-minute battle sequence in
Right.
live action.
Yeah,
So
like we
he's
gotta
perfect for them. Him and Philippa Boyan, and Fran, they are great at doing the small, minute details that Tolkien hated writing battle scenes. Hated writing battle scenes. It's notorious that he didn't like doing it.
It's why this part of the history ends in one sentence of like, and
Yep.
then Freyalof went to Medusa and slew Wolf. The end. Like
That's why Helm's Deep is maybe 2 paragraphs.
it's an 8-page chapter.
Yeah, it's not
It's insane. Yeah.
not great.
Yeah. Well,
Not great.
Luke, thanks for coming on and hanging out. I hope
Absolutely.
we're all more educated about Rohan than we were an hour ago. And I hope this is somewhat helpful as we all go into the movie.
It'll be great.
Yeah.
I can't
Where
wait to
can
hear
people
it.
find you on the internet?
You guys can follow me at the Podwans. We go live every Thursday night. We'll be reviewing Skeleton Crew. And you will see our predictions for War of the Rohirrim in a separate video. And then we will be having, after the movie comes out, we'll be doing a review of that as well. So you can follow us at the Podwans on all social medias. You can follow me at Jedi Master Hags on all social medias. But yeah, that is me.
Awesome. Again, thank you for coming on. And do you have any parting words for the audience?
Don't eat too much lembas bread.
And that's what I'm talking about.